Tonight on Hindsight, the United Nations has been in Nigeria for the last couple of days. It is the first of such visits. It visited Maiduguri for a first-hand assessment of the security and humanitarian crisis unfolding there. We examine the implication of that visit. In part 2, we'll take a look at the latest development in the U.S. from the unprecedented wiretapping allegations made by a sitting president against his predecessor to the rollout on Monday of a new immigration policy by the Trump administration. Also, over the weekend, Latin America remembered its former president of Venezuela, HUGO Chavez, who died of cancer 4 years ago. We take a look at his legacy. We speak to the Deputy Mission Chief of the Venezuela Embassy here in Abuja. I am Shegun Ojumu, and this is Hindsight. Shegun Ojumu. On this program, we'll be bringing you news, views, and exclusive interviews with
security that cut across humanitarian aid to.
It becomes easier to do business in Nigeria. Now,
Nigeria.
We begin in Nigeria's northeast, where the visit of the United Nations Security Council to Nigeria has afforded the body the opportunity to beam the spotlight on the crisis in that region. The UN Security Council delegation described the crisis as a neglected one. It has also put to rest anxieties of the international community about the human rights engagement of the Nigerian military in handling the insurgency in the region. The council met with acting President Yemi Osinbajo on Monday evening at State House, Abuja. Our State House correspondent Kende Amodu has this report.
United Nations Security Council as a neglected crisis because the attention of the world is focused on so many other crises around the world. The Council is making it a point to beam the spotlight on the crisis because it has been able to see firsthand how serious things are.
And I think it's also important because, a number of countries were feeling that Nigeria could be and should be doing more. But I think this visit has shown them that we are at the forefront addressing these challenges. 3
issues are of particular concern to the body. The security issues.
They've seen that on the security side, they were briefed by the theater commander in Maiduguri yesterday, and they came out extremely impressed with a very lucid exposition that he gave. And so he could see the resolve, of the military. And I think that's very important to get the buy-in and the support of the international community with those security challenges, intelligence sharing and so forth.
The humanitarian crisis.
So, we had this donor conference, international donor conference in Oslo. And of course, almost $700 million has been made available to us already. And I think that this kind of visit will help us to raise even more money for the humanitarian challenges we're facing.
And the human rights issues, which has been of great concern to the international community.
The Vice President made a very good point that, the nature of the combat with Boko Haram is not conventional warfare. And so it took some getting used to. And our troops are now, much more schooled, as it were, in that kind of fight against terrorism. And so we're now putting in place mechanisms to really take the civilian population along.
The Council is also impressed by government's social intervention program because it believes that the long-term development of the region is very crucial. It has been a good visit for Nigeria because the acting president has been able to articulate the position of Nigeria in taking responsibility for a crisis that was thrust upon it. From State House, Abuja, Kende Amodu, STV News.
Before the UN Security Council delegation met with acting President Yemi Osinbajo yesterday evening, it hosted a press conference. At that press conference, the United Nations Resident and Humanitarian Coordinator for Nigeria, Edward Kalon, issued a stark warning about the crisis in Nigeria's northeast. He said the humanitarian crisis there must be addressed within the next 18 months. Failure, he added, will spell disaster for the region. The grim warning came on the day the United Nations Security Council delegation concluded its assessment visit to the Northeast. Ajek Mangut has this next story.
This is the first visit of the United Nations Security Council to Nigeria. They're in the country to assess the situation in the Northeast firsthand. This press conference comes a day after they visited Nigeria's Northeast, and their assessment is grim. The situation in northeastern Nigeria is worsening. More than 8 million people are in dire need of assistance, children the most vulnerable. A scale-up of efforts is therefore required both locally and from the international community. Funds pledged at the donor conference in Oslo are needed now.
We have a timeline of 18 months to address the serious humanitarian situation in northeast Nigeria. Failure to do so, the situation is going to protract and the impact is going to be heavy on the population that is already affected by this crisis.
Barely enough is being done at the moment. That is why we are here. That is why the Oslo conference was so important, and that is why donors will continue to need to step up. But it's not just about the international response, it's also about the national response.
But solving the crisis in the Northeast is not simplistic. It goes beyond handing out food and clothing to displaced people.
What is needed in the end is long-term development, jobs, environmental issues addressed.
Seeing firsthand is much bigger than what we are anticipating. So seeing government of the region team up to confront militarily, but also otherwise.
We urge the government of Nigeria to ensure that internally displaced returns and refugee returns are voluntary and coordinated with the humanitarian agencies so that key services can be put in place before people go home to their original communities.
The Northeast crisis in the wider Lake Chad Basin region represents the fourth largest humanitarian crisis in the world after Syria, Iraq and Yemen. The UN Security Council is, however, pledging its commitment to the Nigerian government and the Lake Chad Basin countries as they race against time to prevent a looming disaster.
We go next to the United States, where Donald Trump has signed a new executive order placing a 90-day ban on people from 6 mainly Muslim nations. Iraq has been removed from the list of countries contained in the previous seven-nation order, I beg your pardon. People with valid visas will be allowed to enter the U.S. The measure, which includes a 120-day ban on all refugees, takes effect on March 16th to limit travel disruption. The previous order, which was blocked by a federal court, sparked confusion at airports and mass protests. Now, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson said the order is meant to eliminate vulnerabilities that radical Islamic terrorists can and will exploit for destructive ends. According to FBI, more than 300 people who entered the U.S. as refugees are under investigation for potential terrorism-related offenses. Now, what is the difference between the new order, you may ask? The difference is citizens of Iran, Libya, Syria, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen, the other 6 countries on the original list, will once more be subject to a 90-day travel ban. Though the new order clearly states refugees already approved by the State Department will be allowed to enter, it also limits the number allowed in at 50,000 for the year. The new directive also lifts a blanket ban on all Syrian refugees. The Associated Press reports that the new order does not give priority to religious minorities, unlike the previous order. Critics of the Trump administration had argued that that was an unlawful policy showing preference to Christian refugees. So, when will the new ban take effect? Like I said earlier, it will take effect on the 16th of March. The 10 days advance notice may help to avoid some of the chaotic scenes seen at airports on the 27th of January when the first executive order was announced without any prior warning. Another key question is, will the new executive order face legal challenges? Yes, the New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman, the state's highest-ranking law enforcement officer, has issued a statement on Monday saying his office is ready to take the Trump administration to court. We have a short video coming up for you very shortly, but the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee, an Arab-American grassroots civil rights organization, immediately after the new order called for donations to fight impending legal battles ahead. Now let's bring you that press conference yesterday where Secretary of State Rex Tillerson joined Attorney General Jeff Sessions and Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly to discuss the new directive. Watch this.
Well, good morning, and thank you for joining us. The executive order signed by the President earlier today, protecting the nation from foreign terrorist entry into the United States, is a vital measure for strengthening our national security. It is the President's solemn duty to protect the American people. And with this order, President Trump is exercising his rightful authority to keep our people safe. As threats to our security continue to evolve and change, common sense dictates that we continually reevaluate and reassess the systems we rely upon to protect our country. While no system can be made completely infallible, the American people can have high confidence we are identifying ways to improve the vetting process and thus keep terrorists from entering our country. To our allies and partners around the world, please understand this order is part of our ongoing efforts to eliminate vulnerabilities that radical Islamist terrorists can and will exploit for destructive ends. The State Department will coordinate with other federal agencies and implement these temporary restrictions in an orderly manner. Our embassies and consulates around the world will play an important role in making sure that our nation is as secure as it can be. And the State Department will implement the provisions in this order that allow for the admissions of refugees when it is determined they do not pose a risk to the security or welfare of the United States.
One of the Justice Department's top priorities is to protect the United States from threats to our national security. Therefore, I want to discuss 2 points. First, the national security basis of this order, and second, the Department of Justice's role in defending the lawful orders of the President of the United States. First, as President Trump noted in his address to Congress, the majority of people convicted in our courts for terrorism-related offenses since 9/11 came here from abroad. We also know that many people seeking to support or commit terrorist acts will try to enter through our refugee program. In fact, today more than 300 people, according to the FBI, who came here as refugees are under an FBI investigation today for potential terrorism-related activities. Like every nation, the United States has a right to control who enters our country and to keep out those who would do us harm. This executive order seeks to protect the American people as well as lawful immigrants by putting in place an enhanced screening and vetting process for visitors from 6 countries. 3 of these nations are state sponsors of terrorism. The other 3 have served as safe havens for terrorist countries where governments have lost control of their territory to terrorist groups like ISIL or Al-Qaeda and its affiliates.
The fact remains that we are not immune to terrorist threats and that our enemies often use our own freedoms in generosity against us. Today's executive order, which President Trump signed this morning, will make America more secure and address long overdue concerns about the security of our immigration system. We must undertake a rigorous review and are undertaking a rigorous review of our immigration vetting programs to increase our confidence in the decisions we make relative to visitors and immigrants that travel to the United States. We cannot risk the prospect of malevolent actors using our immigration system to take American lives. This executive order is prospective in nature. Its focus is on preventing the entry of new foreign nationals from the 6 designated countries. Accordingly, it is important to note that nothing in this executive order affects existing lawful permanent residents or persons with current authorization to enter our homeland. Unregulated, unvetted travel is not a universal privilege, especially when national security is at stake. The White House worked closely with the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice, and the Department of State to create an order that addresses previous concerns and protects the homeland and every one of our citizens. The men and women of the Department of Homeland Security, like their brothers and sisters throughout law enforcement, are decent men and women of character and conscience. They are no less so than the governors of our states and territories, of our senators and members of Congress, of our city mayors and various advocacy groups. These men and women are sworn to enforce the laws as passed by the United States Congress and would be in violation of the law in their sworn oaths if they did not do so. We do not make the law, but are sworn to enforce it. We have no other option. We are going to work closely to implement and enforce it humanely, respectfully, and with professionalism, but we will enforce the law. I want to thank the President for his leadership on this issue and for his steadfast support for our important law enforcement, security, and counterterrorism mission. Again, as previously mentioned, I have spent much of the day today on the phone with members of Congress, the leadership, explaining the ins and outs of this EO, and I did the same thing last week. So there should be no...
The people in that video were the U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, the Attorney General Jeff Sessions, and the Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly. Hindsight will take a short break now and returns soon. Stay with us. On this program, we'll be bringing you news, views, and exclusive interviews with
security that cut across humanitarian aid to...
It becomes easier to do business in Nigeria. Now,
Nigeria
welcome back. Now, it's 4 years now since the death of Hugo Chavez, the former president of Venezuela. The message when South American leaders gathered over the weekend to remember him was peace, unity, and prosperity. Now, President of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, was at the Cuartel de la Montana alongside other Latin American leaders to pay homage to their former leader. Evo Morales, Daniel Ortega, Salvador Sanchez Serén, the presidents of Bolivia, Nicaragua, and El Salvador, respectively, among others, gathered at a monument to pay tribute to Chavez, who died of cancer 4 years ago. In Abuja, the former Venezuelan leader was also remembered by the Embassy of Venezuela. Maria Luna is the Deputy Mission Chief of the Embassy of Venezuela in Abuja. I have been speaking to her about how they honored his memory this past weekend. Watch this.
Well, first of all, it's the fourth year of the commemoration of the pass of our commander Hugo Chavez, and the best way we have to remember this sad moment for us is to share with the community about the sports and education. So the embassy have prepared a football tournament with the youngest people at the community, and we give donation, we give scholar kits for some student of the first, we have here in Nasarawa the first primary school, Hugo Chavez Frias.
Oh, okay,
so
nice.
we take the opportunity to give donation, a scholar kit for them. So
scholarship, you mean?
Yes.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let's look at the legacy Hugo Chavez left for Venezuelans. Talk to me about the legacy he left for his people.
Well, I think the first legacy and the most important was the people got to defend their rights, their social rights. Before Hugo Chavez, we didn't know we have a constitution. He taught everyone how to read and how to understand the Constitution to defend our rights. So I think it was the first legacy he gave us, how to defend our rights. And the people start to prepare themselves to become part of the popular power.
Okay.
Because in Venezuela we understood that it's not the president, it's only the popular power. The popular power have the right to decide who is the one who will rule the country and how we can defend our rights with that people we decide to be in the power. So I think this is the legacy.
A very important legacy.
Yes.
Okay, we've talked about Venezuela as a country now. Let's broaden the horizon now and talk about South America. What sort of legacy did he leave for South America as a continent?
Yes, Hugo Chavez was an example for South America. Venezuela and Venezuelans, we were an example with him to South America because the people defend their rights and start to create the popular power. So now with the people in defending their rights, I think is the most important legacy, because now they know how to defend each other without the power of only the president. Now I think South American people have understood that the people, the popular power is the most important. And I think this is part of the legacy. Besides education, health, public health, this is very important, and hospital. Yeah, South America is been growing up since Hugo Chavez has arrived to the government in Venezuela, because have been an example. Now you can see Correa in Ecuador. You can see Bolivia with Evo Morales. They are growing up. They learn from Hugo Chavez. They are growing up how to defend their rights, the rights of the people. No? Before, the people doesn't exist, just the government, the power. And now they get to know that the people
hold the
is
power.
The power. Yes, that's important.
Fantastic.
That's the legacy.
Fantastic. Okay, before I let you go now, as a person, how do you remember Hugo Chavez every day?
Wow. Every day, I remember my first job was thanks to him. I went to the university because he gave me the right to go to the university, because I don't come from a very high level family.
Okay.
And before, it was very hard to get inside the university, even the popular one. And he gave me the right to go to the university and educate myself. And then I start to fight for the right of the people. And I remember my first job was in the community, in my city, working with them and teach the people how to defend and how to know the Constitution. With the years, I moved to the capital and start to work with the Ministry of Justice. And Chavez was for me like, you know, like the special people you are waiting to meet to grow up. And thanks to him, I'm here. I became diplomat, and now I have the voice to defend the right of the others. Yes, and as a woman, it's very important now, because in Venezuela they start to represent the government through the voice of the woman, and it has to be important. No? The woman in the society is important now. So for me, Hugo Chavez, every year, every 5th of March is is sad, but is happiness, because you can see in every child, you can see in every people you meet that speak about Hugo Chavez with so much love and passion. You feel that you are doing good your job, and you have been learning so much, and it's time to spread the love, the legacy.
The legacy.
Yes.
That there was Maria Luna, the Deputy Mission Chief of the Embassy of Venezuela here in Abuja, talking to me about the legacy of the former president of Venezuela, Hugo Chavez, who died 4 years ago. I'm afraid that's how we end the show tonight. Let's keep the conversation going. We are on Twitter at HindsightSTV, or email us at hindsightstv@gmail.com. Those addresses are on your screens there. I am Shegun Ojumu saying goodbye for now.